Good evening, and we are live. So, welcome to the Singles Oasis podcast. I am Mary, your host, and I am so excited about part two of our segment. So, if you did not know, the Singles Oasis is a ministry and refuge and a gathering place for singles. Here at the Singles Oasis, singles will receive biblical wisdom and wise counsel to help them in their walk with Christ. Our foundational scripture for the singles oasis is Proverbs 11 and 14. Where there is no counsel, the people fail, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. If you are watching for the first time, please let us know in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for tuning in tonight and welcome back. Please like and share the broadcast with your followers, friends, and family. So, tonight on episode 6, we are continuing our discussion on singles domestic violence. And also, we will be covering abuse. In episode 5, we previously discussed, we tongue tied tonight. We previously discussed domestic violence, stalking, and dating red flags. As well as ways in which ministry leaders can minister to those that are currently dealing with and are survivors of domestic violence and stalking. So if you missed episode 5, don't worry. The recording is available. It's available on the Singles Oasis YouTube page. It's also available on Facebook, and you can also listen to it on Spotify and Substack. I am so excited because guess what? Our special guest is back for part 2. Tanesha Ash-Shakoor, JD, the CEO and Executive Director of Voices of Color, has so graciously agreed to do a part 2 of the segment. So very quickly, for the sake of time, I'm not going to read your bio over again, but Tanesha, if you can just take a few moments to tell the audience who you are, that will be great.
Again, thank you for having me, Mary. I am Tanesha Ash-Shakoor. As she said, I'm the CEO and founder of Voices of Color. I am a survivor, which is how I started this work, and I serve as a qualified expert witness for domestic violence, civil and domestic mediator, a plethora of other things. And I'm sure if you have an opportunity to go back and look at the previous video, I encourage you to do that, and you can learn all the facts, the additional information about me.
Fantastic, fantastic. So thank you so much, Tanesha. Again, we want to thank you for joining us again and graciously agreeing to do part 2. Very quickly, I just want to give a brief recap of our last segment for those that may have missed the segment or may want to watch the segment again. And there's some key points that we really want to draw out. So we talked about kind of the definition of domestic violence, and domestic violence is often referred to as intimate partner violence. And domestic violence is defined as a pattern of abusive behavior in a relationship, one partner to another. And the goal or purpose of domestic violence is to maintain that power and control. And abusers use different tactics to maintain their power and control. There are different types of domestic violence or different types of abuse, which may involve physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse, and even legal abuse. I don't know about you all, but there was a stat that just really, really blew my mind from the last segment. And an average of 24 people per minute are either victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. And our last Singles Oasis segment was about an hour and a half, just a little over an hour and a half. So that equated to what? A little over 90 minutes. So if you did the math, that equated to 2,160 people that would experience intimate partner violence during the time in which Tanesha and I had our conversation during the last segment. You know, it's very easy to tell people, or it's very easy for people to tell someone that is experiencing intimate partner violence to leave. But there's a 75% chance or an increase in homicide when the victim is attempting to leave. And oftentimes, people are unaware of the danger that they're facing. Tanisha, in the last segment, you had mentioned that 16 to 24 and actually 18 to 24-year-olds are more likely to experience intimate partner violence. Why?
Well, I think we're dealing with, just if you look at the age range, that is typically, uh, these are youth, still what we would consider children going into their adulthood. We typically are at an age where uh, we're in love and think we figured out life, and we don't necessarily want to share those conversations with our parents about maybe someone we've taken interest in, maybe someone we're dating. Oftentimes, we're preparing to go to college or maybe in college. So, as many of us may know, our parents probably did not know half of the people we probably talked to when we were in college, and because we didn't know where that relationship would go. I think we're also in a, I don't want to say in a dangerous time, but through a lot of social media now, we're seeing the younger generation, and I don't get into like, oh, that's Gen Z, millennials. I don't know which dynamics it is, but um,
Hmm.
where you're seeing a lot of individuals talk about no contact with parents. Like right there's this ideal of no contact with parents, and I say that it can be very dangerous in this world where you're seeing the age of 16 to 24, because when you're no contact with parents, parents don't have any idea what's going on. They don't know the relationships that you may be engaging in. So you're not necessarily sharing that information. And I think too, we also haven't tapped into, we're still getting to know us, and we're at a very vulnerable age that we don't necessarily recognize until all of these things are transpiring. We're realizing like this is growing up. I am really being an adult, and I'm really not prepared for that.
Wow. Wow, which is so true because they say that um, both men and women, that's a time in which they are still maturing. So there are parts of the brain
Hmm.
that can't really fully recognize or make wise decisions, again, because
Hmm.
of the age and the immaturity, which can, again,
Hmm.
it does not excuse the behavior, but in terms of trying to navigate and make wise decisions, that's a time frame in which is very challenging for the 16 to 24-year-olds and those
Hmm.
18 to 24-year-olds.
And hormones are still operating and still being all figured out, right? And so I think that that is part of it.
True, which I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Just a few more takeaways, and then we'll really dive into part two of our discussion. Um, just in case our audience is unfamiliar, stalking is defined as a pattern of repeated unwanted attention, harassment, contact, or any conduct that is directed at a specific person that causes fear. So that can range anywhere from unwanted phone calls, text messages, showing up uninvited at this person's home or job, or even at their family member's house. This person is always turning up where you are. This person is following you. This person may use monitoring technology. We talked about air tags. This person may be sending you threats, whether those threats are on social media or they may be sending you unwanted gifts. And some of the major red flags we need to look out for, especially if we're single and dating, is look out for that jealousy and the possessiveness, because those are red flags that later on can turn into the stalking, because that person must have you, that person must know where you're going, that person must, again,
Mhm.
exercise that power and that control. And if they can't have you, then no one else can. You often hear that in instances where someone is being stalked, and the perpetrator, that's something that they typically have said, is like, if I can't have her, if I can't have him, then no one else will.
Mhm.
um, for ministry leaders, because we wanted to make sure that our ministry leaders had the opportunity to not only learn about these interesting dynamics, but to also learn and come away with some tips on how they can minister to and possibly help those that are currently experiencing domestic violence or stalking. So, some of the pitfalls that our ministry leaders need to really be careful about is really giving that untrained advice.
Mhm.
Be very, very careful. If you're advising or counseling someone that is experiencing intimate partner violence, you need to be very careful, and you need to look to those and reach out to those that have that
Yes.
specialized training, that can help you in terms of counseling members of your congregation. Something that we all that you had mentioned that you commonly see too is pressuring survivors to forgive or reconcile immediately, and that ministry leaders, it is so important, it is critical that we focus on listening and empowering the survivors choices, and we need to respect the survivors pace and healing. Ministry leaders, please, please, please do not recommend marital counseling where there is currently intimate partner violence. For one, the playing field is not equal. There's an unequal playing field. They need one-on-one counseling, because you don't, not only are you unfamiliar with the power and control dynamics within that relationship, but you don't know what's going to go on behind closed doors once they leave home.
Hmm.
It is so important for us as ministry leaders to validate the survivor's experience and feelings. We should not be
Hmm.
minimizing what they experience. And again, before we started the segment, we were praying about being moved with compassion. We as ministry leaders need to be moved with compassion when we are made aware of intimate partner violence amongst our congregation. We need to stop saying things off the cuff, and stop with the platitudes, and we really need to embrace them and show compassion. And then ministry leaders, don't be afraid to make a referral to someone within the community that has experience. Tanesha has a wealth of resources. She is a resource. This is not something that you have to try to handle on your own. Again, we have resources. There are experts. There are folks that are specifically trained out here to help us. So I wasn't sure, Tanisha, if you had any additional statistics that you wanted to share with our audience that you didn't have a chance to share before.
I did, and I think we talked a lot about the most common on. I think it was important, like we talked about how many, like in the duration, and I think that 75% increase, and then we talk about what we have heard, like it takes a victim at least a minimum of 7 times to leave before they finally leave. I think that is a
Mhm.
common one that people have heard. And, a lot of times I think people are like, why does it take so many times? And then we talk about those dynamics and what the experience is, all the different things that would keep someone from leaving. So I think that we can't, that is so important for people to understand when we talk about that question of why we always make the statement of why don't you just leave? And that number 7 exists for a reason.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. So I had a few follow-up questions before we dive into our conversation about abuse, but there's a few that we didn't have a chance to discuss before. So, what type of trauma can domestic violence and or stalking cause to a survivor?
So primarily one that everyone or people can relate to is just PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. That is very common amongst survivors of domestic violence, and what that looks like for them. The cycle of fear. And I when I talk about the cycle of fear, because you have a fear that has been instilled, or you've been groomed, and so that fear is there. So even as you move on with life, those things begin to affect your entire life. And so to give you an example is, I'll use my personal example of having my ex make several house keys and came in on me one night in the home, right? So I had this fear of someone, if I'm sleep coming into my home, and I live with that for a very long time. And so because that's the image that's created in your head, so whatever that fear is kind of embedded in your system per se. Shame. So the shame that comes with being quote, and you will hear me, I want to preface, you will hear me use victim and survivor interchangeably based on in which the perspective I may be talking about. I know some people don't like to be called a victim. They like to only be called a survivor or not a survivor, but I am going to use those both.
Mm-hmm.
So the shame, the self-doubt, social withdrawal, and emotional numbness are two that I think about, right? Because you often withdraw from spaces and people because you feel like you're wearing all of this and you don't feel like you have anyone that you can relate to because domestic violence is not just readily being talked about and shared. So you tend to withdraw, and then the emotional numbness. You have lost a sense of being and existence, and so those feelings kind of evaporate because you have all you kind of know. It's like replacing love with fear, replacing kindness with nothing. Like you don't have empathy anymore. You just are kind of a blanket
Mm-hmm.
billboard. um and I remember that for myself after getting out. I kind of went mute for like a year. I just had nothing. I was just quiet. I didn't go places. I didn't talk to people, and I did not have emotions. And because you're basically trained and groomed again, you can go through all these things, but you're also trying to be strong through it while also not showing too much strength so you don't um, set yourself up per se to
Oh, I think we have a delay. Tanisha, we still there? Can you hear me? We apologize, viewing audience. We're having some technical difficulties. Tanisha, can you hear us? I think we have a little bit of a delay. Tanisha, can you hear us? Bear with us one moment. Tanisha, can you hear us?
I am. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can definitely hear you. I think we lost a little bit of what you said before, so I'm going to ask if you could repeat it. Again, we apologize, audience members. Both of us were experiencing technical difficulties today, so bear with us.
Okay, I'm trying to catch back up here. Can you hear me?
Yes. For those that are watching, this is what we're going to do. We're going to end the live stream and then we will start it right back up. So um, stay tuned. We will be right back. We're going to end the stream and then we will restart it.